So as many of you may know, Sony is making a big push for live services. It's why they bought out studios like Firewalk Studios, who made the epic failure that was Concord, why they bought out Bungie, and why they're having as many of their first-party studios essentially delve into the realm of live services. Though, after the failure of Concord, literally one of the biggest flops in AAA gaming history, it made literally zero money. After all that, they did cancel a bunch of live service projects, and their plans of like shipping 12 live services within the span of a couple years, that didn't quite pan out. And something else that they're pursuing currently with Bungie in particular is Bungie's next big live service, Marathon. Now, the thing about Marathon is that it is not in the realm of Destiny at all. Marathon is a completely different beast, whether it's for better or for worse. I guess we'll find out at launch, but currently it's looking like for worse. So this right here, for those who don't know, is Marathon. It is an extraction shooter. It is slated to be released on September 23rd, 2025, and here's what the trailer for it, the gameplay overview trailer for it looks like. This game does definitely have a unique vibe to it. It's got this like cyberpunky, colorful, abstract, kind of almost like minimalistic in terms of shapes and textures, aesthetic to it.
Marathon is a team-based extraction shooter set around the mysterious and cutthroat world of Tau Ceti 4. You are a runner.
And if you've played Destiny,
who's given up their human form for a biosynthetic shell with unique abilities and stats.
In terms of moment-to-moment gameplay,
tactical and fast-paced combat,
the gunplay and whatnot, the moment-to-moment combat,
across a variety of zones and points of
it definitely looks
you'll face rival runners in zones of up to
like that area is going to be, it's going to feel good to play because Bungie is good at that in terms of gunplay feeling good, but it's the game surrounding that people have doubts about.
Colony for glory and fortune. The environments of Tau Ceti 4 are filled with weapons, materials, and equipment you can scavenge throughout the map.
It's an extraction shooter, so you go in,
you'll strategically build your loadout and select a runner.
loot as much as possible.
The run ahead. Your objective is simple.
PvPvE.
Get in, gather as much loot as you can, and make it out alive.
And then you extract yourself, and then you repeat that cycle, and then kind of try to
survive.
Upgrade your character
into future runs as you grow in power and fill
while trying to retain your own valuable loot.
But it's never the end. Think quickly on your feet and outplay your opponents.
Because if you get downed and
you and your
killed,
will be the ones coming out on top.
Others can take your stuff, and along the way there are objectives, you name it.
Factions can sponsor you with a fresh loadout, so you can get right back.
So yeah, you kind of get a general vibe for the game just looking at this initial portion of this trailer.
Action to the forefront. Dynamic and tactile gunplay. Runners with unique playstyles.
Now what you'll find is that
builds create highly dynamic and strategic team fights.
If you look at the likes to dislikes ratio, you can see that there are very much mixed feelings surrounding this particular title based on what people have seen. A lot of people just generally have the sense that the game looks a bit underwhelming. It's not what Destiny fans want. They are looking more forward to something that is that shared world type of experience that Marathon isn't really. It's more of like you go into a lobby, then you go into a match, then you get out, and then you repeat that cycle, instead of it feeling like a more kind of interconnected experience. Like whereas Destiny had this like campaign that could be tackled together or alone, and it felt like it had multiple facets to it. This is just an extraction shooter. So scrolling down, you'll find comments like, I miss the days when shooters came with epic campaigns and multiplayer modes in one package. Others are questioning its art style, saying that at times it looks really cool and other times it looks like a roadblock server. And some people are already expecting that this game won't really do all that well. Like this user saying, looking forward for Bungie's Twitter post announcing this game's live service cancellation due to low player count in a few weeks. Here we have the gameplay reveal trailer. Very scripted, as all gameplay trailers tend to be. But yeah, scrolling down through these comments, likes to dislikes ratio, not great. But then right here, we have plenty of people expressing indifference or expressing a lack of interest or just expressing their disappointment in what Bungie is making here versus what people love from Bungie, especially after Destiny, saying, this is the first time in my life I saw an actual game trailer look like a YouTube ad that I would skip while eating dinner. Which indie dev made this early access game? Oh, wow, what a trailer. Words cannot express my indifference. Am I tripping, or was that trailer cut kind of weird, like too jumpy, trying to make it look exciting? There's this general sense that Marathon is not going to perform quite as well as Destiny. There's just this lack of enthusiasm and excitement over it, and looking at early numbers based on the closed beta, the way the game is trending also suggests that maybe it's not something that's going to catch fire. Beyond a lack of interest for the type of game that they're making here through the Marathon IP, which actually was the first game that Bungie ever made, even before Halo, the way they've converted it into an extraction shooter that is more of like a trend-chasing kind of game, and even within that, not really revolutionizing the formula all that much, combined with the fact that the closed beta has kind of shown that at launch, Marathon just seems very content dry. It doesn't have enough content to really justify its price point. And speaking of price point, the fact that it's not free to play, a lot of people are saying that based on what they played in the closed alpha, it doesn't seem like the game will ultimately justify its $40 price point. And yes, this is closed alpha stage, but the game does come out in September. That's just a couple months away. And in terms of the full offering as far as content is concerned, I think there's like one more map people haven't seen. There's like a couple things that will be added to the final game, but it's not going to be such a substantial transformation that it's going to change perception surrounding the game, is the general feeling. So yeah, $40 price tag is being perceived as something that will serve as a major detriment to Marathon's ability to be able to be accessible and in turn to be able to pull in successful numbers, similarly to how Concord, another one of Sony's live service releases, because they charge money for that up front instead of making it a free-to-play experience. Well, even when it was free-to-play during the beta, that game did incredibly poor numbers, so charging money for it was always going to result in just absolute failure, which is exactly what happened. A lot of people fear that Marathon might experience something similar at a $40 price point. To me, Marathon is going through a very similar journey as Concord is, very like tepid, lukewarm reception when it comes to what's being marketed. A lot of people who've gotten their hands on it and people who have kind of researched the game or checked it out feeling like it doesn't have enough content at launch, feeling like it's not worth even $40, and feeling like the game is overall polished and, it does a decent job of tackling this specific genre, whether it's, in the case of Concord, hero shooter, or in the case of Marathon, extraction shooter, but it doesn't push the genre forward enough and it doesn't stand out enough on its own for it to be able to compete with the established games and to allow this live service to kind of become the billion-dollar success that companies want these live services to be. We're already seeing a bit of the writing on the wall with Marathon, judging by the trend we're seeing with the closed alpha. Numbers in the closed alpha aren't going to be huge, obviously, because it is a closed alpha, but you can see just the way it peaked at almost 7,000 players, and then every day subsequently, we're seeing less and less players. The interest falling off this quickly is kind of an early sign of what's to come, because the final game of Marathon is not going to be that much different from what you play in the alpha. There are going to be some refinements and some content additions that weren't in the alpha, but nothing so substantial as to transform the game to convince people that, if you didn't like the alpha, then you'll like the final game. It's not going to be that substantial of a difference. And then another very telling statistic is Marathon's Twitch viewership. You can see that viewership peaked in sort of the early days of the Marathon closed alpha, particularly the day that the alpha went live. You can see right here that viewership peaked at roughly, 170,000 players, over 170,000 players. But then there's this huge drop off, and then there's not much in the way of recovery, highlighting that people got bored of the game pretty quickly. And then it doesn't help that games journalists and content creators who've gotten their hands on Marathon generally are expressing very mixed feelings about the game. None of them seem overly enthusiastic about it. You've got articles like this one saying that Marathon is a polished extraction shooter, but that might not be enough. It feels like it delivers a satisfying gameplay experience, but the experience around the gameplay could leave a lot to be desired. Again, just not enough meat on that bone. And this is just one example. If you go around the internet and look at all the hands-on previews, you'll find that the vast majority of them, while highlighting some of the positive elements, like the fact that it does feel polished in terms of the gameplay experience, in terms of its ability to be a long-term live service, a lot of people have skepticisms. You've already got folks like Paul Tassi here through Forbes, and Paul Tassi being someone who plays a bunch of live services, urging Sony and Bungie to delay Marathon based on experiences surrounding the closed alpha, how feature incomplete it feels, how it feels like there's just not enough game there, and how it just needs to be more fleshed out and requires just more time for this to cook. Destiny kind of set the groundwork for modern-day shared world looter shooters. It did it first. It's kind of set the trend that others chased after and followed. And that's why Destiny succeeded. It was kind of the first of its kind. And a lot of people feel like Bungie should have just stuck with what they're good at and done a Destiny 3 instead of, trying to chase the trend of an extraction shooter that others are a lot more established in. Marathon just tackles a genre that Bungie fans aren't interested in. And then when it comes to extraction shooter fans, they've got a lot of options already. The competition in that space is already significant, especially with Tarkov kind of dominating that space. Marathon could potentially pull a Fortnite and become the de facto extraction shooter if they support the game enough and they make some changes and really make it, well above and beyond what Tarkov accomplished. But there are just skepticisms of that happening. There's this general sense that the game will drop off very quickly, especially with the trends that we're seeing on Steam and on Twitch from the closed alpha. And there's a sense that this game just won't really live long enough to see it fully fleshed out to a point where it can compete with the other extraction shooters out there. We don't live in the same era that Destiny and Destiny 2 launched in, when competition in that space was meager enough where Bungie could come in and kind of set the bar there. We are in an environment now where live services are rampant, where the space and the market is so oversaturated that even Bungie, I think, will struggle to ship their own version of an extraction shooter and make it a success, especially when the early reception based on the trailers and the marketing that they've shown so far and the hands-on impressions have been very tepid. We'll see, I guess, what numbers look like for the open beta. It's still got the Bungie name behind it, but just because you've got a major name behind something doesn't mean that a live service will succeed, as evidenced by all of the failed live services like Anthem, which had the BioWare name behind it, Marvel's Avengers, which had the Avengers IP behind it. Frickin' Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League had the DC brand behind it, combined with the entirety of the Justice League. Villains like Harley Quinn and Joker and frickin' Deathstroke, you name it. And none of it ultimately ended up appealing to folks because the game itself was just something that was not particularly interesting. It was not what people wanted to see from a studio like Rocksteady. It felt very misguided. I have a bad feeling about the way this particular live service will perform. I think this may end up being a huge loss for Bungie. While I don't suspect that this will be a failure on the level of Concord, I do think the trend that we're going to see at launch is going to be similar to what we're seeing now with the closed alpha, which is a big wave of people, who will check the game out because it's a new Bungie game, then realizing that it's not kind of what they want and it's not as interesting of a game as it could be. It doesn't just do enough. It's got that been there, done that aspect to it that makes it not the most exciting new release, and they're going to move on to the more established live services that bring in more viewership, that are just more fun to play, that are more established, that are more feature complete, and Marathon is going to fade off and unceremoniously die like so many live services have, is the current prediction on my end based on what the general vibes are surrounding this title. But only time will tell. In the meantime, though, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the current state of Marathon, what you think about the game itself and the type of genre it's pursuing, and whether you think Marathon will succeed or whether you think it'll be another dead live service. Are you on the side of the fence of it's worth giving this game a chance, or are you on the side of the fence of like this game feels like it's going to be dead on arrival? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.